Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the IABC Asia Pacific free webinar with Kazuko Kotaki today. Kazuko is actually going to be speaking about diversity and inclusion, which is a topic that's close to her heart. To give you a bit of background actually on how she came about this topic, first off, is Kazuko is actually a deputy director at the PR Research Institute at Kyodo Public Relations. It's one of the oldest and the largest PR firms in Japan. She brings over 20 years of experience that's been nurtured in Japan's largest PR agencies as well as international technology firms, and is a veteran actually in this field. So I was speaking to Kazuko yesterday about how she came about these case studies, and it was quite it's quite a different perspective because Kazuko has actually had a chance to interview quite a number of people and do research in this area. So I'm looking forward to this topic. I'm, by the way, Christy. I'm Vice Chair of IABC Asia Pacific Region. Welcome. We are currently running free webinars almost monthly now because webinars have become a little more popular than it was just about 6 months ago. And I'm really glad you're able to take time today away from your busy schedules and all the calls that you must be facing with all work and hopefully a little bit of play as well. But I'm ready to get started and I hope you are too. I can see everybody has come in. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So if you see at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should see a little Q&A section, but sometimes you can also use the chat as well if you're not familiar with it. And when we get to that area for Q&A, I'll go ahead and read out your questions and Kazuko will be able to help answer any queries that you might have. But yeah, I think we're ready to get started. I'll go ahead and hand it over. And Kazuko, please take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Christy, and warm greetings to everyone. Thank you for joining. So my question is diversity, inclusion, and innovation, is it an oxymoron? Is this something contradictory? Or is this something we can attain all together at the same time? I've been questioning myself in the past quarter century. For this webinar, I want it to be solid. I don't want to be misleading to anyone. So there's so many interviews as Christy mentioned. So I want to share the insights I learned from the global and local leaders. So my steps are threefold. First, understand why and how it works, acknowledge it, and learn from case studies and analyze it and find out which one works for you. And lastly, and most importantly, make an action. That's the most important thing. So let's jump into the framework. So diversity and inclusion touches on 10 agenda out of 17 sustainable development goals, so-called SDGs, determined by United Nations. That as the agenda to make everyone on Earth to be sustainable, leaving no one behind by 2030, only in 10 years. Innovation falls under goal 9, specifically goal 9. So by touching on diversity, inclusion, and innovation, we touch on 11 agenda out of 17. Since all the agendas are so much intertwined, working on this topic makes a huge impact, makes a big difference so that we can all attain the sustainability. That's how it works. And especially today, we all are fight against COVID-19 as we are working from home. So we need an agile and inclusive communications, and personal touch or inspiration makes a difference. Like the global leaders like New Zealand Prime Minister Ardern or Tokyo Governor Koike is doing. So diversity and inclusion is something very personal. In my case, I was immersed into technological innovations like the Japan's first internet data center or Japan's first internet service providers. So I love technology and innovation. And on the top of that, I came to, doing more and more pro bono work, volunteers. And I came to encounter this individual socialpreneurship. This is a great concept I learned from Sadia of Kotler Impact. So to make a social movement, you start on your own, you start yourself, and you talk to like-minded people one by one. That's how you make a social movement. You make a social entrepreneur. This is a really powerful concept, and I got so much inspiration from her. And that's why I'm here today. I'm speaking with you. I get so much energy from my clients, my customers, the global technology leaders like Equinix, Veeam, Appier, and Dr. Min Sun. So they gave me this inspiration, and I carry on to discuss diversity, inclusion, and innovation altogether. So I want to share first 3 global case studies. I'll share with local case studies later. So the first one is Johnson & Johnson. Everyone knows Johnson & Johnson. It's a huge company. But back in 19th century, they were an innovator, entrepreneur. They still are an innovator, but they were an entrepreneur. They started off the new concept of antiseptic. And what's notable to them about them is more than half of their inaugural members were women back in the 19th century. So they are born to be very diverse and inclusive. And today, there are so many employee volunteer groups, ERGs. So that's what makes them very unique. There are so many different people with different affinities, and they become open about it. So they are highly recognized in many categories of diversity and innovation, inclusion. And what's really important and notable about them is they don't have any dedicated diversity and inclusion officer. The head of HR, the Masako-san, she just bonds people together, including the managers and top management and all the employees. You see sometimes companies just introduce chief whatever officer. Like, okay, we have a chief innovation officer, so we are ready for innovation. But it doesn't work that way, not necessarily, because one person cannot change an organization overnight. It has to be infused into every single employee or members. That's how we have the diversity, inclusion, and innovation together. So that's why the Johnson & Johnson's organization is perfectly designed, I thought. And this is a really good example. They had a workshop back in 2018 for fathers on the Father's Day. And the title was Children to Fathers and Father to Children. And this workshop, the fathers of Johnson & Johnson employees, they got together and discussed, so what makes an ideal environment for their daughters, their children to be working at? And they watched videos of female employees and other employees, and they found out some programs like the work from home, which we all are currently doing, and also short work hours. Those programs are very good for women to work at Johnson & Johnson, so they are supportive. So the father employees found how effective their organizations are, so they become even more supportive to the company. So that's how they make the company stronger. That's a great case. What's very interesting about Johnson & Johnson is they have this written document called Our Credo, and it all has the diversity, inclusion, and innovation essence. So this is a living textbook. They always come back to Our Credo and say like, oh, is this okay with Our Credo? They are living with it. This is wonderful. So I asked Masako-san, but how do you make it? There are so many employees, and Johnson & Johnson is a big company, but how do you make it? And she shared her personal story. She has a very multinational and multi-ethnic background. She was born in Japan and brought up in Europe and Canada. So she has a very diverse background. And that is how she can identify the very true value of each employee so she can support everyone. And she also told me that, things like award or, ranking helps them to be, more highly visible in the diversity and inclusion field. Talented people come to Johnson & Johnson to join. So that's how they are capitalizing on their diversity and inclusion, making an innovation. This is a great example. But you might think, well, Johnson & Johnson is a medical company, so it's kind of easy for them to be diverse and inclusive. No, it's not true. So let me go on to the next one, SAP. SAP, you might think it's an ERP company, enterprise resource planning company. No. That was the first, their startup back in 1972. They were an entrepreneur in Germany, and now it's a global company. And now they're an experience company. They're innovating themselves constantly. And diversity and inclusion is a really, big topic to them. So they are working with the person by Deloitte maturity model. They are trying to be truly inclusive company, and they know they are not there yet. So they are, making a great step toward. So, country, APAC country like India, Japan are highly credited by making this progress. So they have a very unique agenda, inclusion strategy. It's called their 3G Plus Manifesto, determined last year. So 3G stands for gender, generation, global culture. And in order to be truly inclusive, they have this, beyond 3G mindset too. Okay, I'll share 3 case studies at SAP. Those are really lovely. The first one is team diversity. This is for their manufacturing customers. In Japan, manufacturing is a big market, big industry. So for their manufacturing customers, SAP increased the diversity of gender, generation, the global culture, the 3G. And customers were first surprised because they're used to men talk. The manufacturing sector is like very, man dominated. But then the customers started realizing, oh, it works much better because they get inspiration from young generations or women or, different ethnicity people. So they become more innovative. So customers, have come to SAP more and more. So SAP's manufacturing business grew. So it's a win-win situation. So this is a great example of diversity, inclusion, mix, and innovation. I was really touched on that. Next one is shadowing program. This is very unique too. So SAP Japan sent people, an increasing number of people to abroad, different markets across SAP. And that's how the employee of SAP Japan experience different market, different culture or business customs, because that's how they can learn the difference. And one really interesting comment I got from Olga, the head of HR, was one senior manager, Japanese senior manager, came back from this shadowing program, and he said to her, "You know what? I learned managers can be nice." And then interesting, he used to think, well, managers have to be manly and authoritative. And he found out that that's not true. True managers or true leaders are the ones who are caring, just like the Adrian or Koike I touched on early on. By showing that, true care and empathy, people can, feel the same with you and follow you or, support you. That's how you, become the leader. So this gentleman learned that through this shadowing program. This is a great program. And the third one is really cute example, something called Yellow Ribbon for Inclusiveness. This is actually designed by young people, young talents at SAP. So they're capitalizing on their younger generations. So the yellow ribbon is a sign for, welcoming feedback. So I put one picture I got from SAP. Any yellow ribbon is a sign of willingness to receive feedback. And one really, really stunning example is one very senior SAP Japan manager. He put a yellow ribbon on the door of his office, showing like, I am open to your feedback. I'm not touching. So something like yellow ribbon or even the rankings or awards, those are something visible. So let's, take on the advantage of it, make the most of it. So that's how yellow ribbon campaign worked really well at SAP. So I asked Olga, how do you make this? Obviously, she's leveraging her identity. Born in Russia, she's a Russian. She speaks to Japanese managers, so she can share the different perspectives or speak up different opinions. And also, she shared with me the importance of authenticity and empathy. And logic. I mean, logic is very credited in Japan, as Olga told me too. Well, because Japan is a very organized country and people like the rules, regulations, so logic is important. But on the top of that, you have to be authentic and empathetic. That's how, people feel, sympathetic to you. And it's like a circle or a triangle. So it has to be all connected. Okay, the third one, childcare. This is a PwC example. So, well, PwC is a big company. It's a big, great company. But what they are doing here as a voluntary work for after-school childcare. So the volunteer people at PwC get together and provide the after-school childcare consulting service. They are capitalizing on their business skills, their business consulting assets, talents to support the local communities and educations. So I went to interview Kenji-san. He is actually a good friend of mine and happens to be my good neighbor. So they clearly see the needs of after-school child caring because they need multi-stakeholder management. They have to include parents, policymakers, educational institutions, and legislators all together. They have to support business decision makers to take some kind of risks. So the business decision makers can feel secured to by working with PwC. So PwC can support the people with need. So I asked Kenji-san, how did you make this? He's making a great movement within PwC and beyond. And he shared his personal story about having having twins born in Indonesia when he was working in there. And he started to realize the importance of life and the meaning of work. So he started his own work style reform to live with a purpose. So he talked to so many of the his colleagues, and he got together with the voluntary groups, and that's how he started this initiative and movement. So again, diversity, inclusion, innovation, it's very personal, as Kenji-san shows. Okay, so but you might think, all right, all of them are big companies, global companies, but I'm working at a small local company. I can't do that. No, it's not true. I'll share 4 great pioneering case in Japan. And before I go on to that, I want to share 2 premises, at least in Japan, and I believe it's something work for you too. In a country like Japan, we're very much monolingual and monocultural and monolithic. you don't see much of the diversity, visual diversity, like other parts of the world. Like we don't see that much ethnic diversity or language diversity. So inner diversity is very, very important. I get this quote from Shino, bar owner, contributed to Nikkei Cross Women. Okay, you can increase your inner diversity by securing a third place. Apart from the first place, which is usually home, and or second place, which is usually work. But third place is somewhere you can be connected with people of same affinity or interest or hobby whatsoever, and very flat and equal relations. Yeah, this is very insightful. Today, like, under COVID-19, you can secure the third segment. Within 24 hours, maybe you can spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes for, third segment to increase your inner diversity. Just like now, we are connected for diversity, inclusion, and innovation. This is a third segment, I think. Another premise is knowledge diversity. I learned this from Kawakami sensei of Waseda. She is studying the marketing. She's a professor of marketing. And she studied so many Japanese organizations and how it works. She found out that Japanese companies have job rotation, so-called. So people experience different jobs, roles, and responsibilities so that they can see the companies better. They have understanding of the organization better by doing that. So that's how the Japanese employees increase or grow their knowledge diversity. It can be true at local communities or households by doing various kinds of jobs or roles, tasks. You can increase your knowledge diversity. And what's really interesting about Kawakami sensei is that she's an innovator herself too. She likes music a lot. She loves music. So she combines the classic concerts with technology, AI, sports. She makes a very innovative classic concert called Classical. And she's planning to have that in July. I'm so excited to join. So the first case is learning services. This is a case of learning in context run by Sorata-san. This is a Kyowa Busan company entrepreneur. And this is a company he took over from his wife's grandfather. So the learning in context is providing learning support for various organizations like nursing schools and universities, etc. And what's really authentic about them is that they provided free support for people engaged in healthcare, because they are the ones who are fighting against COVID-19 at the forefront. So they provided the free after-school care at one of his after schools in Tokyo, East Tokyo. So this is how he shows how they're authentic and sympathetic. So Sorata-san is diversifying his business, which he succeeded from a liquor shop, for the sustainability of his business and sustainability for the community. So I asked him how to make this. He's a great innovator and empathetic, authentic communicator. And he shared his story of traveling around the world earlier, and he loves history. So he learned from, different countries, different cultures, different ages even. That's how he is very diverse. He has like so much inner diversity and knowledge diversity. And after his daughter is born, he became so very passionate about education and community support. That's how he is making an innovation, being truly diverse and inclusive. So he serves even as a local shopping mall chairman. He's a passionate leader. The second one is Tsukagoshi-san. He's a really well-known figure and among the parents. He started the child-raising boom. He works as for a NPO, Fathering Japan, and also Toray Corporate Business Research is a business consulting firm. So he worked both as profit and non-profit. He changed the notion of child caring or child raising. Previously, before the child raising father boom started in 2010, 10 years ago, the child raising was mother's job, women's job. Many people used to think that, maybe today, even, mothers think, well, child raising is my job. But that is hindering fathers to join. So he's changing that. He's making change of that. So previously, the child raising support was paid to only mothers without fathers. But that is not fair. That is based on the stereotype of, fathers can work or men can work so they can get money on themselves. But sometimes, sometimes it's not true. So he worked hard to change the law to have the fund goes to fathers, single fathers without mothers. And so the law had changed. He made a change in law. That's a great case. And now he's working with ministries to change managers at corporation in Japan to be more inclusive and supportive to parents, fathers, to be more active in child raising and, true to work-life balance. So he's a great innovator, leader, stunning. And the third case is Mayu-san. She has a twin brother who was born with autism. And she was having pain, internal pain, to be a sister of autism brother. She was always suppressing herself, like, oh, I can't ask more because my brother is first, or I don't want to bother my parents, So she was suffering. Then she met with this great workshop called Shibu Shops. It was started in the United States, so she learned that. She imported that workshop into Japan. She was working on it for 20 years. And so she's supporting so many of family members, brothers and sisters of, someone who had needs for special care. I was stunned. I was like, burst into tears, literally, when I heard her seminar, because I never knew people with, family member who are, some kind of patients or some kind of challenge, disabilities, have so much pains. I didn't know. I was so ignorant. So she touches on so many people's heart. She's a true leader, I thought. Very, passionate and very personal, very caring leader. This is a great, great case of diversity, inclusion, and making a change, very innovative. Fourth one, and big one, promoting differences. This is the case of Shinji-san. He's the CEO of Personal Design Institute. This is an NPO providing the notion of people design. And he also makes a great, creative products at his Next Time Liberation company. So he runs the expo called Super Welfare Expo in Shibuya. Shibuya is a very popular place in Tokyo. He makes the entire city to be a showcase of promoting differences. So he changed the concept of social welfare or welfare. This is very unique and very powerful. So many Japanese media loves this story. And he's making a job too. He's working in Kawasaki by partnering with Kawasaki Frontale as a professional soccer team, football club. He's creating jobs for people with special needs. And he's increasing diversity on the community. I think great to create a job for that. And he's capitalizing on the power of sports and art and music or the entertainment. He's very innovative. What's really unique about him is he's a global speaker too. Well, Japan has a very high language barrier. If you don't speak Japanese, you wouldn't be able to penetrate the market. And the other way around is true too. Not that many speakers from Japan go abroad or go to the global arena and speak. But he's different. He goes to so many places like Austria, Netherlands, New Zealand. He has a house in New Zealand. He's living there too. So he's passionate about bridging the gap between handicapped and non-handicapped, or major, minor. Yeah, get over it. Okay, he's inspired his second son, born with cerebral palsy. So he's fighting for people with difference. He's showcasing the difference to make the world more inclusive and innovative. And so he's highly regarded for the notion of people design. It's a creative method and philosophy to get rid of the social barriers and emotional stigmas with unseen challenges or people with disabilities. So he motivated me to speak up here today. He's a great influencer too. Okay, so the 3 steps are, understand how it works and learn from case studies which fit best for you, and ask for stakeholders. I'm talking about this because we used to have the shareholder capitalism, like you first value the people who brings in money. But no, it's not, the right, direction. The current and future comes from, your care for other people, your care for people who are, who need your support. So money will come after you. Money will come after that. So act for stakeholders, be altruistic. But how can I be an innovator like, any of them? I'm not so challenging and like so, horrifying. Oh, let's think about it. So leverage your personal drive. Every single example I talked about, and even myself, is so much driven by internal emotions or passion. So yeah, you have some passion in yourself. So capitalize on them and be altruistic. Think about others. So it starts with each of us. One really good tip I get from Nakajima sensei of KO is that we all have some kind of eugenics, meaning, okay, this person is better than that one, so this person can, live, or like, that person, well, forget about it. That kind of like some kind of discrimination, like anyone inherently have that kind of like evilness inside. So be aware of it and suppress your own monster evilness. Don't be selfish. And that's truly economically, making sense. His son had disabilities, challenges. He was born with challenges. And he was studying in the United States, and he found out how the United States is more inclusive to people with challenges. And when he came back to Japan, decades ago, he realized the big difference. And he was, first very angry, but then he is a professor. So he studied, so many cases, and he studied so many, the situations. And he found out that being inclusive makes economical sense. So he wrote this book, Economics of People with Disabilities. This is a great book in Japanese, so I wish I can globalize it, by translating in English, because this is a really great book. Yeah, second and last quote I get from Michiko-san is raise your visibility. This is so true for people with difference. I mean, everyone is different. So raise your visibility and show how different you are. What difference you have. That's how people can get to see the difference. Like when I told you about Mayu-san, I didn't know there's a people with pains of having family members like autism. So when I learn, I can understand, I can act on it. So it's really important to raise your visibility. True for example, women at the male-dominated working place, things like that. You can make a change by raising your visibility. So the key is inclusive communication. Like I said, the Prime Minister Arden or Tokyo Governor Koike, they're making inclusive communication so that no one get behind. So now it's time to communicate to stop the COVID-19 together. There are so many great resources. At IABC, they provide great resources. I copied some of the articles so that you can revisit later. And United Nations is providing a call for creatives to support really important messages like kindness contagion, myth busting, do more, donate. Very heartful, touching story. And we at Kyodo Public Relations PR Research Institute also provide resources for Japanese. Japan has a language barrier, so we support the information in Japanese. So I'm open to any questions, but my special thanks goes to so many people who supported me this webinar. They provided me so many insights and the passion, very so many thanks. Okay, before while you are thinking about some questions, yep. Let me share some of my credentials. Yeah, I'm a deputy director of Kyoto Public Relations, and I do so many volunteers. I go interviews and speaking opportunities to many venues so that I can increase my knowledge diversity and diversity. And yeah, Kyodo we enjoy so many great customers and partners around the world. And my last slide is, we are providing the support for sustainability. Actually, like we need the support for sustainability, we all do. So we just registered March 17th of SDGs Day in Japan. And we are providing useful resources in Japanese on the April 17th of the month, initially from Japan. And I'm hoping to expand that to abroad or global. Okay, those are my parts. So I'm ready to take any questions.
Yeah, so everybody, we've actually launched a quick poll for you with just 3 questions. All the answers are anonymous. Okay. So feel free to reply. Kazuko, some of the questions that have been posed to them first is to find out whether from the attendees that are currently here, how many of their companies have a dedicated D&I officer? And it seems that the majority so far, 70% who have responded, do not have a dedicated D&I. But since you mentioned Johnson & Johnson is a very large company that doesn't have one, at least in Japan, from my understanding. Yeah. Would you say that, how would you help that permeate the entire corporate culture if you don't have a single person leading it? Are you recommending seeking out multiple champions to get that going?
Yeah, great question. Multiple champions, yes. Finding multiple champions will be a great direction. And when you find people with passion for diversity and inclusion, spot him or her or them and motivate them to speak up, and motivate them to have a voluntary work or like any voluntary projects or any voluntary events. That's how they can start movements. So they shouldn't, like, you don't have to have a dedicated officer. Maybe it will not work because I don't think dedicated officer to diversity inclusion is considered to be something like, lucrative. So it's better to have voluntary people with passion. That's my answer to it. Does that?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it actually is quite encouraging from an attendee. For example, our point of view is if you don't have a DNI officer and if you don't have the ability to influence that hiring decision, knowing that there are companies who are making a difference without one, I think is a good stepping stone.
Yeah.
Just knowing that it's possible.
Yeah.
We also found that the other question that we posed is how attendees would describe their company's approach to DNI, and whether it's high priority, whether it's increasing in importance. It's quite hard, it's quite encouraging to see that about 36% of the attendees have responded that it is increasing in importance company-wide. So it looks like it's something that is rising, which is great. But what would you say, because I did notice that a lot of the examples, there tends to be a personal reason that fuels that passion, right?
Yeah.
And do you have any tips on encouraging that discussion to find people within the company and opening yourself up to having those conversations?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it will be depending on the company or environment where, what is most appealing to them about driving diversity inclusion and making innovation. But I had the same question to one of the speakers, Shinji-san. So how do you start your, initiatives? And like, how do you make like such a big social movement? And Shinji-san shared with me like 3 tips or 3 elements. He said, at least in Japan, the great impact they can make is to have people with international experience, having immersed into different cultures or different countries. Actually, 60% of impact will coming from such international experience. And 30% comes from daily trouble or daily pains. Like, yes, Shinji-san has like the son was physical challenges or challenges, or some people have language barrier here, things like that. Something bothers you every day, and you are really passionate about it. And the remaining 10% is people with like wealthy people with good-hearted, very content, like the Bill Gates. He is making a great impact in the world for diversity, inclusion, innovation. So the mixture of having international experience and daily pains and wealthy and content elements, that makes the impact or big elements, big momentum for diversity, inclusion, innovation. So if you find any of them, that kind of person in your organization or in your environment, spot him or spot her or spot them. They will be making a great initiative, firstly.
Okay, and actually that brings us to one of the first questions we've received now from the audience. The first is, can you share how to get budgets set aside to push this inclusive culture forward, and if there's any helpful reasons you've come across it to give to the senior management and leadership in encouraging DNI in the company?
Right. Okay, my answer might be too very dramatic or drastic or harsh, but forget about budget. Seriously. I mean, like, you better do on your voluntary time or voluntary budget or like your like daily spendings. Yeah, forget about securing budget for diversity, inclusion, innovation, because it just starts itself. So I share so many of the personal stories. It's driven, internally, self-driven. So they don't think about money. Money will come after. Yeah, and I was really amazed by Johnson & Johnson because diversity inclusion is so permeated to every single employee, everyone. So they don't secure budget for diversity and inclusion because that's making them strong, and they're making great money out of clean money out of it. So don't forget about, don't think about budget for that. That's my opinion. Sorry, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, good. It sounds like, as you were saying, to gain momentum first. And as it gains more momentum, and when the company recognizes that, for example, if a in-house child daycare center would be of assistance to this growing group, because it's being pushed and advertised by the champions and, raising visibility, that it will hopefully naturally generate some budget or reduce the resistances to budget requests.
Exactly.
The next question actually comes from Marianne. Marianne mentioned that, okay, it's not really a question, it's a comment. Marianne mentioned that she thinks D&I should be related to the company's long-term reputation and as an employer of choice. If companies saw D&I as an expense, then the company is very short-sighted.
Yep, I think so too. Yeah, I agree with you, Marianne. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, there was another anonymous question about convincing management to allocate resources and budgets. So that seems to be a popular topic, but it sounds,
It's okay. Yeah, because of course, securing a budget for programs or campaigns, certainly have to make economical sense, make business sense. So in that case, right, just write a clean and clear proposal with the reasons and outcomes planned. That will persuade. Like, I'm pretty sure. That's how I'm making my corporate blog, our corporate blog at Kyodo PR. So like there are some money required to launch the blog, online CMS, whatever. But I do write most of the blogs, so it's my own Saturday Sunday job. So outside of work, so it's really attainable.
Okay, it also sounds to me like you've just mentioned about that coming up with that business plan is really to make sure our communication plans are in line with the business goals, and then re-emphasizing D&I in every step of the way and how that would contribute towards what the management is looking to achieve.
Yeah, totally, exactly.
Right. Are there any other questions from the audience? We've got a little bit of time, so that's great. Feel free to pop in any comments if you have. But essentially, have you had a chance, Kazuko, to actually have any conversations about diversity and inclusion in countries where, for example, the culture might be very, very different in the sense of, yes, the monoculture still exists, despite the fact that there are other cultures in the country as well. Would you find that there's greater resistance to having those conversations, or are things getting a bit better now?
Yeah, I mean, it's getting better now, especially because COVID-19 is affecting everyone. So prior to this COVID-19 outbreak, Japan had, like, at least in my communities or in my environment, close to my environment, people were having a hard time accepting work from home, for example. But now things have changed, so everyone is working from home, when possible. So yeah, things are changing and becoming more and more inclusive, and facing having better acceptance of innovation. And in a longer term, I think country like Japan, where the culture is very much monolithic or monocultural, I think we have greater challenges, greater resistance toward the diversity inclusion. That's for sure, because people are afraid to speak up. I felt that when I was in mother communities, I was a new mother, before, and like everyone's trying to act the right mother model, but it's not true sometimes. At least it was not right fit for me. So depending on where you are, you will have greater resistance, but get over it. Capitalize on your difference. That's my message.
Yes. Hello, this is German. I'm working with Kotaki-san. Just a little comment on the diversity and inclusion budget issue, especially from management side. Of course, there are some senior managers who are always thinking about the financial situation of the office. So they will ask. I mean, it'd just be a natural question. And if we go with, if you're not looking for diversity and innovation, we're not a good company, or we're not looking to the future, that's just going to go into deaf ears. So what we think will be an approach to say is to explain how does diversity and inclusion benefit to the company in the long term? Have some sort of explanation that, yeah, well, not necessarily do we need a specific budget for this. However, we do need time, resources, and the correct staff volunteer to do this at the beginning. And eventually, yes, we might make some money out of it in the future. But if you go at the beginning with, we need diversity and inclusion, and if if you don't listen to me, we're not a good company, you're just gonna go into deaf ears. One example is, for example, the diversity inclusion officer. As Kotaki-san was explaining at the beginning, it does not have to be one individual. It's just an extra duty that a senior officer can assume, just as the compliance officer, or just as the welfare of the company's issues in charge person. This is just an extra duty that he or she can assume on his own, and propose programs that will eventually have some sort of benefit. For example, if you have a happy staff, you will have more production, obviously. So those kind of explanations will help out much more than just going negatively, oh, we don't do this, we're not going to progress, or we are going behind other companies. So just from management's point of view, that at the end of the day, we're always looking to improve the financial situation of the company in order to pay these happy employees. Because otherwise, if we're not able to pay these employees, then no matter how much diversity and inclusion you have in your company, they're going to leave for better pay at the end of the day. Just to be as clear as Kotaki-san has been, no matter how much you do this, and if you're not paying your employees with good income, they're going to go, period.
Yep.
Thank you.
Right. And I think besides budget is also, important to run any program, but besides that, you need to have two kinds of support. One is the senior management support. I get that from like SAP also. So you need to have senior management support. It doesn't have to be money, but the acknowledgement is important. And also family support. The Olga-san of SAP, she was influenced, and she was taught by her daughter to be diverse, inclusive and diverse. So like her daughter constantly sent her like videos or like great, SNS showing the importance of inclusiveness, because there are people who are not included and feel, suffering, like having pain. So, or, Tsukaguchi-san, he's a father and having 3 children, and he's getting support from, his family. So getting the family support is important too. So that, you feel you are not alone.
Yes, absolutely. And I think from, taking from what your colleague German has said, as well as from what you have said, it sounds as if maybe the first step to having and introducing D&I, for example, if it's not a conversation that's being had yet, is perhaps to start with tackling current business problems, and whatever the current priority is to management, if we can review that, and as communicators see how D&I, how other companies in that similar industry is integrating perhaps D&I practices together with the solution of that problem, it might be a little easier to just get that ball rolling. So if you're having a problem with employee engagement or retention, then if you can introduce D&I practices that would help as part of that solution, perhaps it would just go down a little easier. Take those baby steps almost to get that conversation going.
Yeah, true. It's true too, the 17 goals under the Sustainable Development Goals. You start with the, closest one to you, the one with the most, the best fitted affinity to you.
Right, based on the business practices on the industry, basically, would you say?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so that's why, I'm working at a PR firm, and I'm part of the PR Research Institute. So like I can capitalize on my, communication, tips or skills or whatever, or for a network, so that, I can promote or I can encourage people to be, more diverse and inclusiveness, and that brings in innovation. So it makes economic and business sense too.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think that's it from me. That was great, actually. If we don't have any other questions, Kazuko, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate. We've gotten feedback that people are really appreciate the case studies that have come in, the personal stories that have come in, as well as the examples and tips, practical tips on how to get started. To let everyone know, by the way, Kazuko is our speaker. She was initially going to speak at IABC Fusion, which is going to be happening next year, hopefully. But I'm so thankful that she was able to spare the time and actually share her knowledge with us today via webinar in a way that all of us will be able to access no matter where we are. Our next webinar is actually on 13th May at 2 p.m. Australian time. It's by Myri Barton, and she'll be speaking on comms professionals who are at the really the front line of mental health. So I highly recommend signing up for that webinar. It is on the IABC APAC website, which is www.iabcapac.com. We'll send a mailer after this with the recording of today's session, along with the link that you can use to sign up for Myri's session. We have, by the way, also a midweek comms drop-in that our chair of IABC APAC, Zora Artis, is hosting. It's weekly Wednesdays on Zoom. There's no registration required. Just click the link, join us for an hour or less, depending on your schedule, and we'll be happy to have you. I'll include the link to the midweek comms call drop-in as well, just to make it easier for everyone to access. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you, Kazuko and German. I mustn't forget your colleague. Thank you, German.
Thank you. And I'll be uploading my slide to the SlideShare so that you can revisit it. And there'll be YouTube afterwards. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it too.
Yes, I will definitely include the PowerPoint presentation in the email as well. Thank you, everyone, and have a enjoyable rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.